Hello, I'm David Grayson. I run the Doughty Centre for Corporate Responsibility in the Cranfield School of Management. And I'm talking to Chris Marsden, who's one of our visiting fellows of the Doughty Centre and also one of the major figures in both the Institute for Human Rights and Business and the Centre for Business and Human Rights. And over the last few years, Chris, you've become something of an expert on the issues of business and human rights. So you're obviously passionate about this, but why should this be something that busy MBA students need to think about? Is human rights really something that MBAs are likely to have to grapple with in the few years after they've left their business school career?
Well, if we were talking about the environment, you would consider this was a non-question. And I think that human rights is now possibly where the issues on the environment was 10 or 15 years ago, getting there but not yet fully established. And so there's no doubt that human rights alongside environment are becoming the two big issues with regard to business sustainability. Human rights as issues that companies are going to face, particularly in difficult parts of the world, international companies. Or companies operating here and sourcing from these parts of the world. It's becoming critically important, both from a moral standpoint, but often from a straightforward business risk-taking standpoint.
So really, at the very least, this is part of mapping what are the significant social, environmental and economic risks that we've got and understanding where it might fit into our risk matrix.
I mean, you say that I'm an expert in human rights. I would consider myself, if I'm an expert in anything, it is on the understanding or on trying to help students to understand the impact that business has on all aspects of society. And human rights is a huge part of that. If one is thinking in terms of impact on workers, impact on communities where you're operating, particularly those that are less able to look after themselves, as of course is the case in Africa and many parts of the East.
So having taught in a number of business schools around the world over the last 15 or more years as a guest lecturer or visiting faculty member, you've written with the Institute for Human Rights and Business and the Doughty Centre a teacher's pack for how to teach MBA students in particular about the fundamentals of business and human rights. You've produced it as a 2-hour block session that teachers can use. What kinds of faculty do you think could be in a position to use your teaching pack and to take MBA students through the basics of business and human rights?
Well, I think it could be almost any group. I mean, they could be economists, it could be strategy, human resources. It could be any faculty that actually wants to look at the impact that business has on society, the issues therefore that raises for new managers, and so they can understand them and how they should deal with them. I wrote this because whereas there are electives on corporate responsibility, there are even specialist courses on business and human rights in certain places. I don't believe that that's actually getting at the number of people in management that it needs to. We need to get at all future MBA students, and therefore it's unrealistic to expect them all to do courses in business and human rights. It isn't unrealistic to expect them to spend 2 hours on just being introduced to the basics of what it is that you as a future manager, possibly leader of a company, need to understand about the impact that you will have, either directly because you're operating in parts of the world where human rights are an issue, or you are sourcing from those areas.
We've produced this teaching resource. I'm somebody in a business school who's maybe interested in taking this up and trying to do this 2-hour class. But maybe I'm a little bit nervous about, do I have enough knowledge, because I'm not a specialist in these questions of business and human rights, where in addition to the teaching pack that we now have, where would you recommend that they turn to as non-specialists if they want to supplement their knowledge a little bit?
Well, there are two sources that I'm personally very much involved with, obviously, and I would recommend going to those First of all, there's the Business and Human Rights Resource Centre, which is an independent website which provides neutral information, encouraging NGOs and others who are raising issues on particular business and human rights to actually present their case, and then it goes to companies who then respond to that. And as a result of that dialogue, and going back a number of years, there are now hundreds and hundreds of companies that you can actually research in terms of what their human rights issues are and how they're responding to them. On top of that, there are a number of specialist aspects within the site, particularly giving full detail of the Ruggie report to the Human Rights Commission, the UN Human Rights Commission, and all it says about the general principles and so on, which is the sort of current level of sort of soft law, if you like, that underpins the way companies should behave. In addition, there's also the Institute for Human Rights in Business, which has also got a very good website with a lot of the latest discussion on these issues. So those two would be my first points of call.
So if you wanted to develop some kind of further mini case studies over and above the ones that we have in the teaching pack, and wanted to have some understanding of some of the kind of current topical issues that students might raise with you in class, then those two websites are free resources that you can access as a faculty member very easily.
That's exactly what it's for.
Chris, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.